I have.
Okay.
Okay.
Good.
Okay. I think
Thank
everyone.
you.
Good. So anyway, when Margaret suggested that she has this call together people to hear about the book, I was excited. And when the number is starting to come in as great as it is, I'm even more excited. I see a few people I know, a lot of people that I don't. And so I'm just great to meet you and to begin to talk to you about this book. So I'm going to use a PowerPoint periodically. So let me just get it up. And here we see let's see now, I need to flight show. There we go. Gonna go backwards for a minute. The name of the book, as she held it up, you may or may not have seen it, is Journey Faith in an Entangled World. And it took me a while to figure out what I wanted to title it. And these two concepts came together that I thought was extremely important for me. The first is Journey Faith. Now, some of you may recognize it. It's a term Pope Francis has used to differentiate from a lab faith or a creedal faith that's often disconnected to one's own experience. So you think of the Apostles' Creed, the Nicene Creed. We have our belief statements and we say, do we believe in them? And it goes right to our mind. It's our rational yes or no. And what we're finding out is with a lot of people now saying, well, they don't quite know whether they believe all that, is they're talking, what is their head? But their heart is another thing when they're experiencing faith today. And so the journey faith is one that continues to grow, turn a corner, come back, make a wrong turn, however your journey may travel. And it's within our life. And so I chose the word entanglement because that's a key concept in quantum physics. It describes the interconnectedness of everything. Gone are the days that your faith is what you do on Sunday and all the rest of the week it doesn't matter. Well, I shouldn't say gone are those days. Many people still think faith is only something related to the interior of a church or a temple. Whereas faith, in entanglement, it's entangled with your entire life, what you're learning, what you're experiencing, and it's going to reshape it. And so I chose that as the title of the book. And in order to understand the why I wrote the book, et cetera, is to hear a little bit about my life. So let me just stop here for a minute with the sharing and just spend a few minutes talking a bit about my journey faith, so that you can sort of see why and the why and the what that has been integrated into my life that now I'm put together in a book. I grew up on the south side of Chicago. I doubt if there's many New Yorkers who came from there, but I grew up in the south side of Chicago and went to an IHM, my congregation Margaret mentioned, to grade school. And I just was the most pious little girl I think you could find. I mean, I loved everything about the church. I went to all the various novenas we had, and we had a lot of them. Then there'd be those missions, priests would come and talk to you about all these things. Oh, I'd be in the first row. The Stations of the Cross, the rituals, the smells, the sounds. I loved it. And I love God, and I wanted to be perfect. So it was not unusual then that I chose to become a nun, come high school, back in 1966. So it's a different time, of course, today, but many of you probably have maybe a little similar story. And so I entered the IHMs, but as you might remember, and if there's some younger people here you may not even know about, the Second Vatican Council. In 1963, the Vatican held this council, which was just awakening, because what it did, as one of the cliches was, open the windows to this institution that had really been pretty enclosed since the Middle Ages, and said that we had to be in the world, not outside of the world. It called religious women to take a look at our original charism. So by the time I entered in 66, I only knew that there was a council because one of the sisters gave me that there's a big fat book with all the documents in it, about inch, you can't even read it today, I guess, most of us. But I didn't even know there was a council. So I was expecting no change. I was going to wear a habit all my life. I was going to live in a convent. I didn't care whether I taught or whatever. I'd have all these time to pray. Well, indeed, that wasn't what's happened. So we already were changing, and some of our women were sent to study theology. So those formation years were just incredible. And we were learning philosophy, philosophy, theology, liberation theology began to creep in, the social justice documents of the church. And then we learned how to pray, together learning how to pray. And I learned a lot about mysticism because Teresa of Avila is one of our patrons, but also some of the newer, like Thomas Merton and Teilhard de Chardin. A little story. I was in the postulate, the early time of entrance, and I saw a book and I picked it up and just was sort of delighted in it. And it was The Divine Milieu by Teilhard de Chardin. Now, I'm sure I did not really comprehend this man's incredible gift to us, but something caught me in how he was able to talk about God rooted in his scientific mind of evolution and the kind of things he would integrate into his experience. It just stayed with me throughout my life. And so this kind of study and prayer continued when I went to St. Louis University. And there I was able to do an integration with the women's movement, Hands on the Peace movement. I was a draft counselor, and also with the economically disadvantaged with the GED program. So all these things were sort of infiltrating me. I was getting entangled with them. And my God and me spirituality really wasn't holding very well any longer. And so that continued with my other experiences, some of which Margaret mentioned. I taught in our suburban school for high school for a while, and then our city school, all African American. And then that went to network for 15 years in Washington, D.C. Very different Washington, D.C. than today. And just aside, because this is Jimmy Carter's funeral today, if you listen to any of the eulogies, that was a brilliant time and a lovely time. That's when I came to Washington, and to be working for all those justice concerns. Carter was really quite fine. So it was a great memory for me today. But those kind of things really kept coming into my life and being integrated. And then I started studying people like Ken Wilber, spiral dynamics integral, the quantum physics, new cosmology, Brian Swim, the new universe story. I'm sure you've had this throughout your congregations, the transformation of consciousness, and rooting that into contemplative practice with people like Constance Fitzgerald, the Carmelite from Baltimore, Maryland, and Cynthia Bourgeot being just models and really sort of touchstones for me. But needless to say, as I suspect you have experienced as well, it comes up against our creedal faith, our lab faith, the things we are asked to believe. And so that I started saying, well, what's my experience of God? What is that experience? Tested, of course, we all are coming from the tradition, but with what is this about myself and others and God? And so I was coming face to face with that. And when I was serving in the leadership and the president in the Leadership Conference of Women Religious, I gave a presidential address in 2000. And it sort of culminated those experiences when I said to the group that many women religious were at an impasse with those in the clerical church, some in the clerical church. And the ways we know how to respond just don't work anymore. And we need to imagine new possibilities that come from the deepest place within. And so that kind of a commitment to a deep spirituality or contemplation. So following that leadership role, I then started this Institute for Communal Contemplation and Dialogue in 2002. I knew contemplation needed to be socialized, so that's why it was communal. And I felt the most appropriate discourse for our insights was dialogue. And so as Margaret said, we've had programs since 2002 trying to really help and assess and help all the movements for the transformation of consciousness. That rooted in contemplation, we can make a difference. And so the vision of the Institute is pretty much that, to create new responses to the crises of our time and to cultivate a healthy earth community. And the unique kind of, I think, perspective we bring is that rooted in the communal contemplation and dialogue. So those first programs then were very much trying to see how can we respond? What can we do? How do we see differently because of contemplation? What's the power of transformation, not only of one's interior self, but how one looks at the world around them? How does one change and enter into the public arena with new eyes, a new consciousness? How do we do that together? And so this past 23 years of designing programs, writing those reflections Margaret mentioned, and talking with sisters all over the country and others, not just religious women, but others who are on a search, I thought, well, you know, maybe after all this time, maybe I have something to offer. And so that's when I decided, okay, let's try a book. So with that, let me return to the PowerPoint again. Sorry, the wrong way. So why did I write this book? Well, it's for a number of reasons. And hopefully you can identify with most of them or some of them, and maybe not, and that's okay too. But I wanted to explore how to address the problems of today from a different consciousness than the one that created them. You probably hear Einstein's famous quote in that. And Einstein said, you cannot address the problems of today out of the same consciousness that created them. And I think we only have to reflect on these last decades, or especially the last years, how we're trying to solve extremely complex problems the same way we did them years ago, out of a similar mindset. And we're our consciousness, and we can't and we won't be able to do it because we need to start to imagine new ways of responding. I wanted to address the false separation of faith and science. You know, since about the Middle Ages, the church and the science have sort of split. In the good old days, the queen of the sciences were philosophy and theology. And then guess what happened? Physics, chemistry, all the hard sciences began to make themselves known much more in our world. And soon, what was the purview of the religious leaders got subjugated to the political and civil leaders. And that kind of a split in power also then kept the church from acknowledging things. Some of you may remember John Paul II, just during his reign, said that maybe Galileo was right. Now, that's a long time to try to integrate new insights. And so this false separation, I believe, is causing a problem for people who are growing up with all this science today, and then a religious system that's really a creedal belief system that they don't get it anymore. They don't understand it. They can't quite believe, perhaps. But also you listen to people who they say, do you believe in evolution? And we have a lot of people in this country that don't yet. So there's a false separation. And I think we'll see some of that in the times to come with some of the folks who are really very traditional in their religious beliefs, are often very much not as aware of what has been happening in science and see it almost as a threat. And I don't think it needs to be. And then to understand how I can live within my faith tradition, integrating the insights of evolution, quantum physics, and the development of consciousness within it. I didn't write, this isn't a treatise, it's not a PhD, it's not a theology book. It's truly it's experiential, tested against good and solid, I hope, theology and science. I don't pretend to be an expert in any of that. And then to share how contemplative prayer invited me to take a long, loving look at the real. It's one of the favorite ways I like to talk about contemplation, because it's what we have in front of us. It's just that we all see that differently. We all have different glasses on, and our consciousness is different. So we may be looking at the exact same thing and seeing it totally different. So how can we keep taking a long, loving look that expands our vision? And how it's awakened in me a way of being that involves both transformation of self and re-engagement with the world in ways that could contribute to an emerging future propelled by love. So it's not just an interior, and that's, even if it was just interior transformation, that'd be great. but it's so much more, because as you open the spaciousness and can start to let go of certain things, you begin to see in new ways. And if in fact you begin to encounter in this entangled world some of these other insights, you can begin to understand why perhaps today we look at people in that all people are equal. Again, the eulogies today. Jimmy Carter was someone who in 1976 to 1980 brought women into positions of power, African Americans into positions of power and authority. So he was a man, I believe, probably of a great contemplative depth to be able to do what he did. So how do we, who are called to this professionally as religious, those of us who share that in common, how can we do that in better ways? And to share experiences of God, divine mystery, entangled within everyday life as signs of hope for the journey. So for whom did I write this book? Well, I think a lot of people, people would say, oh, is it just going to be for Christians? Is it for Catholics? Is it for Buddhists? Is it, well, really. So I came up and I really believe it's for anyone who desires to express their experience of God, divine love, in ways that reflect their evolving understanding of self, others, and the world, and who even in the face of impasse, chaos, desire to do something about our future. And so I did. So how is it organized? Well, it's organized like an art exhibit. Now, again, a little story. When Margaret mentioned that I write for the Global Sisters Reflection, and I was one of their first ones, so 2014. So I have a sister, a Dominican sister from Adrian, who works with me on the website. And she surprised me in 2022, and she pulled together all the reflections into one binder. So, it's about 120, right? So I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, well, those of you who are writers in the room, this is not meant to be pompous or anything, but do you ever, after you read something you write, you think, wow, who wrote that? That is really good. It can't be me. So that sort of was the response. I looked at some of this, I thought, this is really quite good. Could it be reorganized, added to, look at it and see, is there something here that could be for perhaps possibly a book? And so someone did that, and she helped me and helped me throughout the entire process. And as we were doing it, she did it the first time, and I sent it out to about 20 people in organizations that I knew and in different congregations. And I said, well, get your comments, So they said, oh, they wrote back saying, you've got to do this. This is very good. You've got great things in here, but it's not clear who you're writing it for. We're not sure why you're writing for it. And we don't like the way it was organized. So instead of being discouraged, I thought it opened up, in the creative process, there are those moments when you just go blank, or you think this is stymied, or you're being so critical, and all of a sudden it goes another way. Well, that's what happened here. And I started calling this person who was helping with me my curator, because what she was doing is really, these aren't necessarily just reprints, they're organized, reorganized, integrated. And then the artist that was working with me for the cover and the inside illustrations said, when you go through an art, and I said I was thinking of an art exhibit. She said, when you go through an art exhibit, you're not seeing the creative process, you're seeing the residual of the artist's work, the picture. It's when you engage it that you really you're experiencing the creative process of the artist. So I thought, that's it. This book is not to be read cover to cover. It's not, like I said before, a theology book. It is really a reflection book. And it invites you, as the person going through the exhibit, to get involved, to engage the reflections through contemplation, and then ask yourself, what is evoked in you? And after this sort of formal presentation, we're going to engage in just one practice and before we open it up for questions. So it looks like an art exhibit. So what does that mean? Okay, well, there's the cover. And the entanglement, I think you can see where it is. And the artist, it gets sort of a theme all the way through. You get a note from the author, and the art exhibit explain the metaphor. But the first two galleries are sort of important. So picture you walking into the art museum, and if you're in a special exhibit, you'll get a little thing about the artist. So that whole first gallery is really the artist's journey. It's taking what I just told you a few minutes ago and expanding it to really let you see a few of the times in my life that were significant, that shifted, the shifts on this journey, the kind of twists and turns. This gallery too is also important because it's the medium. It's how and it's what I used to write these pieces. And that's contemplation. So if you look down here, you'll see that there's about 5 or 6 areas: the invitation to transformation, contemplation, contemplative practice, witnessing presence, contemplative dialogue, communal contemplation, education for public contemplation, and I'll talk to that in a few minutes, and spaciousness to create. So each gallery starts with that opening and then continues with reflections. You're asked to read the first 2 galleries first. So in a certain way, it's like the opening of the exhibit. You're sort of, those are the first 2 rooms. And then at the end of each gallery, what you're invited to do is to create. So there's a spaciousness to create page where you're invited to engage the reflection in a contemplative practice, and then to allow yourself just to see what that experience has been for you. What's evoked in you? What might have become present to you? What do you challenge or shifted in you? And then try to give us some creative expression. For me, words are very creative. So it can be words, poetry, doodle, drawing, whatever. And just use it. Now it's at the end of the gallery. You certainly can do it after each one. But it's an attempt again to say, look, it's when you engage the piece that the real creativity comes. And then the rest of the galleries, 3 to 7, there's 7 galleries, so 3 to 7 are about various aspects of our life. So taking that and seeing what's real, the real of our times. These are the critical issues: climate change, immigration, racism, the pandemic. What are we learning from that kind of a scare? Clerical abuse, and the violence in our lives. 4, gallery floor is public life and democracy. So, how can we still be one nation with great diversity? How do we need to reinvent our democracy? What can we do? The moment needs transformational leaders. How do you have radical trust? What is good in our history that we can go back and fetch it, but transform it in the process? And can Christians be progressive? So I try not to, it's not a political piece. Some of you might be concerned, but I come from political ministry of network and social justice. And so it is trying to look at some of the critical issues, but from a contemplative perspective. Gallery 5 are Christian feasts that again try to just reflect on the tradition with a new awakening or new lens, new language. The seasons, because the seasons teach us so much. And so that's another gallery. And the final gallery is Transforming Power of Communal Contemplation, sort of the future. So exercising contemplative power, living synodality in a polarized world. Consider the snail, because the snail can teach us a lot about this development. The cosmic century, living out of love and forgiveness, evolutionary hope, and spaciousness to create. I tried not to use too much lingo in the reflections, nor too academic. And so the notes that follow are really the sources of where the reflection has come from, the thinking, the pieces of the thinking, explanation of some of the concepts. So rather than getting bogged down in the text, you can just reflect on it and then go to the notes for that other kind of discovery. And then a lengthy bibliography, because people have asked me over and over, what do I read and what? So anyway, I thought, well, this is the opportunity. So it's a smattering of what I read and what I've been reading around these various areas that have now become my entangled world through which I try to express my journey faith. So how can you use a book? Well, certainly individually. To learn. I mean, if you're not very well schooled in contemplation and might be interested in it, the first 2 galleries, and particularly the second, would be very helpful beginners to look at it. It also helps you to deepen your contemplative practice, so as to see in new ways. We can have contemplation can be a variety of things, and they're all good. But the way that I'm trying to express it is, again, this opening sense of spaciousness, so you can begin to see in new ways. You might get Like, oh, I never thought of it that way, or that's interesting, or whatever happens. It could be communally, where you might want to share and inquire into each other's experience, socializing one's insights. I don't know about your congregations, but it's sometimes hard for us to talk about some of these areas in our life. We can talk about the sports games and different kind of things, but coming down to sharing about your spirituality is very hard. And the fear is, of course, you'll disagree. Well, but the beauty of that is if we can begin to share with each other, what amazing kind of wonderings and curiosity can we have for each other and hold it. And so the whole section in the second gallery on contemplative dialogue is a marvelous piece of skill building to how do you listen and speak from a contemplative heart. So it could be used in a small group. It's also a resource to engage our political and cultural realities out of a contemplative heart. And that really leads me to this last piece, which is to educate for public contemplation. And that's a term and an invitation that Connie Fitzgerald gave in one of her essays. She's a cloistered Carmelite out of Baltimore, Maryland. And she has written since about the early 80s on the transformative power of contemplation, on how it has this incredible ability to not just transform yourself, but to have how your consciousness shifts and you're able to see in broader terms. It sounds too much cause and effect that way, and I don't mean it that way, but in her, she's asking us to, can we educate for public contemplation? Now, what might that mean? Well, the way I understand it is it's an integration into public life and education of a societal understanding of the contemplative process of transformation. It doesn't mean you go out and necessarily pray in the streets. I mean, it might, but that's not what I'm talking about. It's seeing that your Sunday life and your Monday through Saturday life are all connected. They're all entangled. And so every question is a good question to bring your heart. And so it's the integration into public life and education for a societal understanding of the contemplative process of transformation. It's a profound re-education of human desire and consciousness, so needed at this time in Earth's evolutionary process. Connie is very strong, and if you've heard Margaret before as well, very strong on our evolutionary positioning of we are the emerging future. The consciousness of the human is the next stage of evolution, and we need a re-education of our consciousness and human desire. And it is how we understand and reflect upon our spiritual insights and our beliefs, entangled with evolution, science, the development of consciousness, and other realities of a postmodern world. The answers aren't there yet. We're at a very exploratory stage where you need the commitment of your faith, but the freedom to talk about it and to see what makes most sense. How can we express this in new ways? And then so this is a quote from Connie. We need to know how to educate for contemplation and transformation if the earth is to be nurtured. If the people are to be delivered from the scapegoating oppression of all kinds of violence, and if humanity is to fill its role in ushering in the next era of life on earth, we need to understand and believe in the transformative character of the contemplative process, integral not only to fully develop humanity, but also to the new form of human existence struggling to be born, therefore to the continued evolutionary thrust of the earth and the universe. In many ways, some of this is just, you think, oh, you can get sort of caught up in the words, but when you start to reflect on what some of this might mean and how it reflects the tradition of Christianity in new ways that really are rather exciting and that calls us to live Christianity. As who is it, the poet that said, it's not that Christianity doesn't work, it's just it hasn't been tried. So it's just an exciting thing to me to try to get out as one little step. I mean, I'm not trying to claim the place. The book is a one way of beginning some of this. And so those of you who are interested, you can get it. It's an Amazon, The Journey, Faith in an Entangled World. And for those of you who would like to join the Institute, You just have to go to the institute.org, ICCDinstitute.org, and you'll see a thing that says join. And just your name, your email, etc. And then you might want to click and saying you'd be interested in the Contemplative Sitting Network, even if because that's where you'll get Margaret's reflections, and you wouldn't want to miss them. Beautiful. And you'll just receive periodic mailings. I don't send lots of it. It usually every 4 to 6 weeks you get something. And just simply, like I say here, click Contemplative Sitting CSN to receive Margaret's reflections. So what I'd like to do now, I know you may have some questions and maybe you can just jot them down, but I'd like to actually take us through a reflection, one of the ways to use the book. And we'll do a sit, not for 20 minutes, but just for 10 to start us. And then I'll read, and I was trying to figure out which one. And well, you know, this is Epiphany week, right? It's still the week of Epiphany. So I decided I will use the Epiphany reflection. And then just to give you a pause for another 5 minutes for you to do the process, reflect on what you heard. And then we'll open it up for just general conversation around the reflection. And then when that ends, then we'll just pause and we'll open it up for just general conversation. How does that sound as a plan? Is that okay?
Good.
Right. So Margaret started us so beautifully with breathing. I'd like us to get back into that, to breathe, to just inhale and exhale. And just for a moment, I've been chatting at you for quite a while. So just to begin to get into your own space and just clear your head and just breathe. So again, reminding you that for the way that I define contemplation or use the word contemplation, it is really trying not to think, don't be concerned about if your feelings or thinking or imagining. You're really trying to just let your mind not work. So what you're doing, you could think about it as dropping down and opening the space within yourself to really be attentive to the divine within you. So that as you hear readings or as you encounter life after your contemplative sitting, you're open to seeing things in new ways, opening to the possibility that there's something there that perhaps will help transform you and that you will encourage in terms of your own response. So oftentimes it's either a breath, or those of you who do centering prayer, you have a word that you'll use so that every time you start to get distracted, you return to the breath or to the word. So I would ask you to do your contemplative, whichever way works best for you. If you're new to this, I'd suggest breath, just following your in breath and your out breath. So every time you get distracted, and distractions can be a little, a thought, hey, look at your watch, try not to, just to breathe in and out. And then after that, I'll bring us back in 10 minutes. And then I'll read the part of Epiphany, almost like a Lectio Divina at that point, and have you simply listen to it. And then I'll ask you a few questions and we'll spend some time then doing it privately and then sharing, okay? So with that, let us just set the intention to be open to the divine working within us.
Hmm. Nancy, you're muted.
The Epiphany. John Philip Newell, in quoting Erigena in his book Sacred Earth, Sacred Soul, says that everything is sacred, but we live in a state of forgetfulness about what is deepest in us. The more we forget our true identity, the less we treat one another as sacred. We suffer from soul forgetfulness. The celebration of Epiphany wakes us up. We become conscious of something very important. We remember the person Jesus, who, as Erigena says, comes to show us what we have forgotten. That we are bearers of the divine flow. Jesus reawakens us to our true nature and creation's true nature, that we are all sacred. As we become more aware of who we are as incarnation coming into being, we will radiate that outward. We will act and be in new ways and will nourish those around us and beyond us. One of the profound gifts of incarnation is that we are all invited to share in divine consciousness. The immensity and complexity of the world in which we live can be overwhelming. Yet the invitation is there for each of us to become who we are at our essence, at our core. Each of us has something to give to the entirety of the world. Our planet needs us to accept that gift and live it. The future will continue to call us forth, but the choice of which direction we go is ours. Like the three wise ones who trusted the star to find where they were going, and their dream telling them to return a different way, we will have many choices to make in the months and years ahead. An awakened sense of who we are is needed to respond now. Contemplative practice can awaken us to that gift and deepen our desire to open it, freeing us to engage all that distracts us and keeps us from seeing who we are. When we do choose to open that gift, we are invited to live out of a Christ consciousness as you and me. It is to embody the good news Jesus preached over 2,000 years ago. It is to offer our unique self to the world. Our source is divine loving, intimate and unending. Each of us in our uniqueness is essential to the present and emerging future. Take some time to sit, to rest in divine love, and be open to the you who is emerging. Let the words of Jan Richardson in her blessing, "For those who have far to travel, an epiphany blessing companion you." And I quote, "If you could see the journey whole, you might never undertake it, might never dare the first step that propels you from the place you have known toward the place you know not. And then recommit to the vision that is calling you forth. So we'll just take about 3 minutes and just see in yourself, were there any words that called to you? What was evoked in you? Anything anything that caught your attention? How might you express the epiphany in your life today? So we'll just spend 3 minutes of quiet, and then we'll just see if anyone would like to share any of that. So I think, Margaret, will you help me with the questions? And
Sure.
what we'll do is let's just do first just any reflection that you had on the reading, and then when that seems to the energy's lost there, we'll just move on to then open it up for all questions. So maybe like 5 minutes or so of reflection or whatever you think. Okay, so Margaret, what should they do?
If you can find the raise hand function on your computer, that'd be great if you could use it. If you can't, just wave your hand and we'll watch. I'll go back and forth. I have 3 screens on my computer, so I'll go back and forth between them. Maybe Nancy, if you can keep your eye on one,
Okay, yeah, if we have the
and
same people.
I'll do 2 and 3.
Okay, good.
Angela, okay?
For the people that don't have their video on, we won't be able to see hands waving.
Oh, that's right. So then we'll have to,
Yeah.
well,
You'll have
maybe
to unmute yourself or put
Or
the video
Put it in
on
chat. Put it in chat.
chat, right? Mhm.
right, yeah.
Marita, you have a question or a reflection.
A reflection now, yeah, thank you.
Marita, unmute
Just-
yourself, please.
Yes, thank you. I always
Okay.
go
Hi.
to the wrong item to
No
unmute
problem,
myself.
no problem.
First, I just want to say how excited I am about this, about your journey, Nancy, and the way you've created this book. During meditation, what came to me is I am currently the secretariat for an interfaith and international conference that's coming up in February. And I'm one of 2 women, sometimes the only woman there on the planning. And what came to me is taking more leadership in bringing my own voice into the conference. And so, for example, in the introduction, to put some of my own passion into the introduction, to put some of my own expectations and what is going to be really engaging the participants into the introduction. So that's all I have to share.
That's great, Marita, because I think sometimes those are the opportunities we have, not to give the huge talk, you don't have to worry about that, but what you can say in a few, your choice of words, what you're saying can make all the difference in the world. So I'm delighted. Keep going on that. Hope that works.
Anyone else, a reflection that you'd like to offer? Carolyn, are you raising your hand? Carolyn McWaters? No, okay.
Thank you. I just am aware that Nancy is about half as loud as she was in the beginning of her presentation, and I am straining to hear.
Thank you for that.
Yes.
Nancy, can you do something about that?
Well, I don't know why. I'm at the highest volume on my computer. Now, is this any different, Carolyn? If I'm just raising my voice, I didn't change anything on the settings. So I don't know. I just read your chat. Is it any better if I just push in a little bit?
Just a little.
Really? But it was
Yep.
okay at the beginning.
It was very clear initially,
Then
and
I
after the meditation, it changed.
Interesting.
Oh, you know what? Let me just try something. Is any difference now?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. Just for your tech, in order to hear the chime, you have to turn this musician is something called original sound for musicians is off. You have to turn it on, otherwise no one would hear the chime. But I never realized it did this. So that's very helpful to me because someone else one time said I didn't know what to do and I had that on. Now I know. Thank you, Carolyn.
Thank you. It's perfect.
Great.
So wonderful when we share what we're experiencing, huh? That's a lesson right there. Anybody else, anything you'd like to share? Just reflecting on Nancy's. Yes, Kathy Ortalia.
Unmute.
Unmute yourself, yeah.
Thank
Good.
you. Nancy, I met you many years ago at a conference. I don't remember which one it was, but I remember just one word that you said, and it stuck with me. And we were at breakfast, and I don't know what we were talking about, but you talked about hope, and I thank you for that. It's remained in me. So, you know, when you said something about the essence of ourselves, I was captivated by that word. And, you know, we're reading a book here at our community called Roll to Soul by Connie Zuss, I think her name is. And we're talking about becoming elders. And it seems to me that this journey of faith is a journey whereby most of us looking at us in this screen are on that journey towards being elders. And I believe, I think anyway, that the journey is is one in which we become more and more the essence of who God is calling us to be. So it's just a thought.
Well, I'm glad you're studying something together. I'm not. I
Yes.
did not have read that book, but I think again, it's to know that even as we grow and elder, it's our interior life, so that we can be free and loving in the face of what we know is many of our congregations may not be existing in the future, and religious
Yes.
life itself is questionable. Some of us are in congregations where mother houses are being sold, and what never was thought to be of concern. How do we find the real deep space in ourselves, which I believe is where our true essence is, for the divine to really speak to us, and so that we're not fearful, that we enter the future in love, or respond out of love. So it sounds like that's what you're doing.
It is, and actually that's what our congregation is doing too. We're coming to completion. We have 14 members remaining, and so it's a journey of faith as we move to, the final chapter here, and the I don't know, reward or the fulfillment of what we've lived for our whole lives. So thank you for that.
What congregation are you, Kathy?
We're Congregation of the Infant Jesus, a small diocesan community on Long Island.
Thank you.
Margaret knows us well.
I do,
Yes.
Kathy. Yeah.
Yes.
Anybody else, a reflection that you would like to share? Yes, Regina Burns. You muted, Regina. You need to unmute yourself.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
I just wanted to say to Nancy, I'm also an IHM from Scranton.
Oh, all right.
I
Very
have
good.
many, many friends in your community. I transferred also from Philly. So I know the girls are transferred from Philly. Yeah. During the day today, I watched all of Jimmy Carter's funeral. And I didn't think of this then, but tonight as we're reflecting, the first words that came to my mind was renew. And our community has been working for over 3 or 4 years in contemplation. And one of the things that I'm working on is to go deeper. And you used that word deeper, Nancy, tonight, a couple minutes ago. And for me, something like this is really going to be a real help for me, because I think that, if it's for me, if it's just a surfacing and always that beautiful, I'm pushed, I know that I need to go deeper. And when I listen to these eulogies of Jimmy Carter and what a wonderful person he was in every way, it just excites me. He has inspired me to go deeper. And so I'm sure today, this situation being with all of you sisters will also help me to go deeper. So thank you.
Thank you, Regina.
Denise.
I was thinking, since I've retired, I feel like I'm nothing. And I've been contemplating on fitting in. I am important. I wouldn't be here if God didn't think I was important. He wouldn't have helped cure me all the times I've been sick, as you well know. But I'm looking for a place where I fit in. I'm not educated. I just learn from the streets. But I am important to somebody. I just got to find a niche to fit in. And that's what this brought out in me.
Beautiful. And learning from the streets is a very good source of knowledge. That is
yes, nowadays, yes.
And again, as you start to just keep reflecting on that, in the eyes of the people you see and meet, you are loved, and you're loved in your essence and who you are.
Yes.
I don't think possibly not for yourself, but I know some of our sisters, when they no longer do, when they're no longer teaching, when there's no longer a ministry to go to,
Yes,
there's a
like I
really-
don't have to go to work. What do I do now?
exactly, Denise.
Yeah.
Yes. And I think that's a call to enter into these deeper realms of our spiritual nature. Not all of us will be called to
No.
do that, no, but the possibility. And you have in Margaret a great spiritual director. Not that she needs more people, but she does this work extremely well to
Right.
invite you to the depths of your being. So
Thank you.
thank you for sharing, Denise.
Anyone else? Nancy, do you want to move into questions in case there are
Yeah.
questions?
Great. Yeah. Perfect. And
Anybody
if someone comes up with a thought, and it can be both now, so either way, yeah.
Okay. So whatever you'd like to say. Questions, comments?
Be kind, but whatever you want to say. Oh, I just see a chat from
Yeah,
Marie.
Mhm.
I just saw it. Go ahead, Nancy.
Oh, okay. Do you want to read can you buy the book anywhere?
Other
It
than
act-
Amazon. Other than
No,
Amazon, she's
other
saying.
yes. Actually, no. I did this through the Kindle Direct Publishing, and as Margaret was holding it up, I did want to do the paperback is an extremely lovely one to hold. I will be coming out with the Kindle version in February or somewhere close to that. But there's something about holding this one in your hand that I just love, and people have commented on. So right now, it's only available at Amazon. Now, if you have bookstores, and you could, another way to just let me know, and I could possibly send them. They don't do this. This is the difference in printing. They print on demand. So it's not like I have 1,000 books sitting here ready to be distributed. It comes as you order them. So but it's $18.99 and postage. But if you have Amazon Prime or can borrow someone's Amazon Prime, then you wouldn't have to pay for postage, which is a nice thing too. So, and I know there's, Amazon is questionable, but it does serve us in lots of ways. So sorry there that it's only at Amazon.
Anybody else? Comments, questions?
Yes.
Robert.
Yes. We've been using your book, Nancy, for
Oh,
maybe 6 weeks now,
Oh, nice.
oh,
and it's tremendous.
is it? Are you finding it helpful?
Oh my goodness, yes. It's a challenge, a huge challenge, a healthy challenge, and I just keep digging deeper into it. It's and tonight when we were spending some time in contemplation, the word just kept, a call just kept coming. There is so much, there is such great need in our world today that just the word call to do what we can
Mhm.
in any way that we can. Thank you for the book. It's wonderful.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Robert Mary. I'm delighted to hear that.
Glad-
You were
delighted
early
to tell
buyer
you.
already. That just came out October 1st. That's pretty good.
Well, Katie Claus handed it to me.
Okay, good for Katie.
Very good.
Anyone else? We don't see you. Speak up.
Kathy?
Yes, Kathy?
Oh,
Kathy, you're muted. You need to unmute yourself.
I'm sorry to take up the time, but it stimulated so many questions in me too. And one was, Nancy, I think you said something about, our effect for the world, as being women and women religious and whoever else is on the screen. For myself, I relate to the sister who says she was nothing. Not that I feel like nothing, but I feel like so much of my work now is with community itself, and I would like to think that the work within the community also affects the larger picture, because many of us are involved in this in our own lives right now. I had an active life in nursing and social justice and spiritual direction, which I also do. But you know, how does this really affect the bigger picture?
Mhm.
I don't
Well,
know
I
if
think it does.
I hope it does. Yeah.
We're learning more about energy fields and how energy is created and how we hold each other. And each small group is like synergy. If you really are relating to each other, then you get stronger and stronger. That I just have I just have to believe, and I think it's similar to our, like, what we always would say, prayers of petition. We used to pray to God in this God, and then it comes down. In the sense that same energy is here, but we're praying and working with each other and witnessing to something new. What can we witness to as women who have dedicated themselves to a particular lifestyle? It's no longer that, but it is much more now. And I do believe that witness has an energy that goes outward. I have to. I think this group, we created energy. I think.
Yes.
So Margaret, yeah, I was going to say, if you want to step in, Margaret is a great
Yeah,
resource.
I just, Kathy, there's a Nancy mentioned the Divine Milieu, Teilhard's book. There's a lovely little story at the end of that book, I think it's the last chapter of that book, where he tells the story of a man who happens on a little chapel in the middle of no place. And the man goes into the chapel and he finds there a woman praying, and he watches the woman. And as he observes her deep devotion, he says, it's as if that chapel became the center of the world. It became the axis on which the whole earth revolves because of her prayer and her devotion. So I think, we could translate that nowadays into energy and the entangled energy that we each share with one another. We used to call it the body of Christ. Remember the mystical body of Christ? So it's a lovely little story at the end of the last chapter in the Divine Milieu, if you want to look for it. I find it very, very moving and very encouraging.
Yes.
For the precise reason that you say, we're doing our little thing wherever we are, wondering how does this affect anything, but
I do
challenge
remember.
us to believe it.
I remember a retreat director in our chapel, and our chapel has glass windows, so you see outside. And Chris Karlhofer said at one point, all the prayers go out, beyond the chapel and beyond where we are now, and somehow that gives me hope that what is done here will also affect the greater picture.
Sure. Thank you, Kathy, for bringing that up. I think it's a fine point.
Thank you.
And one we all struggle with at times.
Yeah.
Maria, you wanted to say something. And you're muted, so you have to.
Thank you. Thank
Good.
you. I wondered, Nancy, in addition to our wanting to use your book for reflection, I was thinking of Connie Fitzgerald, and if you could say a little bit about her. She had this, what shall we say, this capacity of the larger world to bring a different way of seeing, to be transformed. Moving this more into the, shall we say, secular.
I
I
think
don't
you're
know.
the public education for
Yes,
content.
that's what I'm thinking of. Yes.
Um,
Can you say a little more about that, or maybe recommend a book of hers that develops that further?
Yes. One of the best books came out, I think, 2 years ago. It's a compilation of Connie's work, 7 of her reflections, and then contemporary theologians reflecting on them. And if I'm trying to find, it's in the bibliography, but the name of it is Margaret, do you remember if it's Darkness?
It's Desire, Darkness, and Hope.
Desire, Darkness, and Hope.
Desire, Darkness, and Hope. Yeah.
And that is, it's edited by, here is where darkness, desire, and hope. I've got it. It's in here. All right.
Looking at my books, trying to find it myself.
I know, and this is what happens. Your mind, especially at this hour, your mind goes. Anyway, it's marvelous, and the work that this is actually taken from. I'm pretty sure it's Transformation and Wisdom, the Subversive Character and Educative Power of Sophia in Contemplation. Now, her essays are not easy to read. You know, you've got to take them, you pray them. I'm sure you know that.
Yeah.
But they are incredible, incredible. And there you have all 7 of them. There are 2 of them on the web, my own website, iccdinstitute.org. The Dark Night of the Soul, her classic one in the 80s, and then the sort of the follow-up, Beyond Impasse. But the one on education for the public education is in an essay in this book. And it really, it tickled, not tickled, it caught my heart and my imagination, thinking, we need to do this. We keep so many things
Yes.
to ourselves.
Yes.
And we're not telling people outside of our own like-minded people things like this. So I think the more you can get it into your introductions there, Marita, the better. And all of us, and Kathy, the small group, maybe there's a little group that you worship with, you can start a conversation with. I think women religious have a great treasure. And my fear is, of course, we're going to die and not many people are going to know about it. Not as many as we'd like to know about it.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Yeah, Mariana, I see your hand is up. And you're muted, Mariana.
Okay.
Good, thank you.
First of all, Nancy, I really want to thank you. Your talk brought me back to the time that you gave the workshop here in Amityville, which I enjoyed so much. But what I would like to say, the word that kept coming to me was transformation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that because I'm a Chinese brush painter, since New Year's, I have been painting snakes, because this is the year of the snake. And when I say that to people, they kind of cringe that I would be painting snakes all day. But I learned a lot, because they're marvelous creatures. And, you know, when they slough off their skin, that's transformation. You know, they're transformed. And as ourselves, we're in that process of transformation. And as we take on new skin, and we have room for new skin as we let go of the old, that everything that the snake symbolizes, like adaptability, to grow in that adaptability for what is happening now in our world, and to grow in wisdom, which is another one of their traits, and to grow in healing, you know, when the medical sign is one of healing, with the snake wrapped around.
Mm-hmm.
And just thought that it struck me that this year, those are all things that I personally need, and that we as a country need. So I think that the snake has something to tell us this year in 2025. So thank you.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Could I add something about the snake, please?
Yes.
If it's okay. In my research over the years, kind of working with snakes, what I learned is when the snake sheds its skin, it's blind. It secretes something through its eyes to help the skin be able to slither off, kind of slide off. But when it's in the process of transformation, it's blind. I just love that.
And I'm pretty sure it goes head first. I mean, then that's probably why the eyes.
Yeah,
the skin,
yeah.
just
Kind of like going through the dark night of the soul.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Just a little add on there. When I went down, was after I left network and I had a sabbatical. And so I went down to Texas with some friends, and they had a place on the creek. And I was walking there within the earliest week or so. There, I got there right there, and I had a snake had must have within the hours had released its skin. I had the whole skin.
Wow.
I thought it was such a marvelous sign of
Wow.
Yeah.
You know, I was trying to figure out what's next in my life, you know.
Well, Nancy, I'll have to send you. I have a poem that I wrote to a snake. I was on a mini sabbatical when I transitioned from full-time at the hospital to part-time.
Uh-huh.
And I was up at Madison, Connecticut at the retreat house. And early in the morning, I walked through the garden to get my coffee. And there was this huge snake looking right up at me. And my initial reaction was fear. I'm afraid of snakes. But then I kind of calmed down. I said, well, listen, you're going to be here for a whole week. Try making friends with this snake. So every day I met the snake in the morning and I called her Sophia. And Sophia taught me so much, the wisdom of Sophia. So I'll have to send that to you. I took it. I found it in my journal. It's from years ago.
Does somebody, Joanne or Nancy, do you want to read the comment on the chat from Dorcas?
Yes, I just read that too. You know,
Somebody want to read that?
now that I wrote, look, someone who has it on the screen, mine got disappeared because I read it and responded.
Our community life affects the way we minister with others. If we come from a happy community or prayerful community, we take all this with us. We need those who remain home and intercede for those who minister outside our communities. In this way, everyone becomes part of the ministry that the community is involved with. Every person is essential in our communities. Thanks for sharing, Nancy.
Thank you. That was Dora. Did you say Dora?
Dorcas.
Dorcas. Thank you.
Anyone else? We're coming to the end of our time at 7:59. Anybody?
The last pitch, please consider buying the book at Amazon and get other people and tell them about it. Okay, now that's my final words, Margaret.
All right. Well, thank you so much to Nancy and for so many things, for being with us this evening, for writing the book, for living the experience of your life so deeply that you can share it so beautifully with us. We're very, very grateful. And thank each of you for being here this evening. We encourage you to continue to check the websites, the We Move Forward Together website. And Joanne, help me with the name of yours.
It's csjbrentwood.org, the Sisters of St. Joseph.
Isn't there it's not Spirit Alive. What is the title of it? Is there a title?
Well, if you Google csjbrentwood.org, it'll come up. And Spirit Alive is on the website as part of, you have to kind of go through all the tabs to see all the wonderful offerings. Spirit Alive is one of them. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Well, blessings, everyone. Nancy, Angela, you want to say something?
Just one other thing. We're recording this presentation, and so it'll be available in a few days, and I'll send it out to you if that's okay. Yeah?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. And it'll be up on our YouTube channel also. So we'll put a note on the website how to access it. Okay?
And then we can get that to you too, Joanne, if you want it for your YouTube page. Okay. So thank you, everyone. Blessings in this new year.
Thank you.
Journey with delight as we go forward. Okay.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Nancy,
Thank you.
want to stay on for a
Thank you
minute?
very much.
Nancy, you want to stay on for a minute? Angela, Joanne?
Yeah, sure.
Stay
And
on
I
for
want
a
to just
minute.
thank you all for coming, and especially the invitation, Margaret, Angela, and Joanne. So thank you.
Mhm. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.